when I look at Roy Lichtenstein's art, there's three things that stand out to me in all of the comic book art, as well as his later art that still included elements of the comic books. And those three things are really thick black lines, primary colors like red, yellow, and blue, and Ben Day dots. Hi, welcome to Baking with Beth. Today we are at the Southwest Tech Kitchen where we are going to make a dessert for Roy Lichtenstein's birthday. We're going to make some pop art Pop-Tarts. So the first thing we're going to do is make a sort of pie crust. So we're going to mix flour, salt, sugar, butter, eggs, and milk. And while I'm doing that, I'll tell you a little bit about Roy Lichtenstein. So he was born on October 27th, 1923 in New York City. And as a child, he liked painting, sculpting, visiting museums, and he also played the piano and the clarinet. And in 1943, he was drafted and spent time in France and Belgium. But then when he returned, he went to teach and then, or study and then later teach at Ohio State University. And we have some butter. We're going to use our pastry cutter and cut our butter in. So Roy Lichtenstein, his original work was a lot of cubism paintings and prints of like knights and cowboys and stuff. But then in the 60s, he started using images from comic books, and he actually became very, very popular doing that. So he would get existing panels from comic books and then take them out of context and paint them on a really large scale. And that was part of the pop art movement. So with Andy Warhol, we talked a little bit about pop art. Pop art was basically getting really normal looking images, things from pop culture, things like celebrities, advertisements, and then turning it into art. So Roy Lichtenstein took what was considered low art comic books, and then by painting them on a large scale, he made it high art. So the interesting thing about Roy Lichtenstein using images from comic books is that he actually lifted them straight from existing comics, a lot of DC comics, and he made like millions of dollars off of a lot of these. Some sold for like $40 million. And the comic book artists didn't really make that much money. He was basically appropriating or, imitating their art. And some people think that's great that he's making high art off of something else. Some people think that's terrible and he's stealing and he should be not making millions of dollars. So it's pretty interesting that it's just comic book pages, right? So we're going to mix this until we have a nice dough. Then we're going to make them into little squares and stick them in the fridge for 30 minutes so they can rest. All right, so now that our dough has rested, we're going to roll it out into a 9 by 12 rectangle. And I will tell you about the history of Pop-Tarts. So Pop-Tart was invented by Kellogg in 1964. The original Pop-Tarts did not have any icing on them because the icing would melt in the toaster, and it wasn't until 1967 that they figured out how to make toaster-proof icing. And the original flavors were strawberry, blueberry, apple currant, and brown sugar cinnamon. And since then, they have made over 30 different flavors. Some favorites, people still really like brown sugar cinnamon. S'mores is really popular, as is the fudge sundae. Some of the least favorites, there was a Jolly Rancher series that people did not like. I also have heard that there were root beer flavors, orange crush soda flavors, and apparently a maple bacon flavor, which I don't know where you can find that. But yeah. Also, Pop-Tarts are not tarts at all. A tart is a filled pastry, but it has no top on it by definition. Pop-Tarts do have a top, so they're really more of a turnover or a hand pie. So once it is roughly a 9 by 12 square, we're going to cut it with our fancy cooking ruler, which is actually a sewing ruler, and a pizza cutter. And with the scraps, you can actually put these on your cookie sheet and put some cinnamon sugar on them and make a little snack, which is what my mom always does on Thanksgiving, and it's really fun. So now we have our rectangle, and we're going to put it, we're going to put it on the cookie sheet. It broke a little bit, so Now, we are going to now score our rectangle into thirds both ways so that we have roughly 9 individual sections, and this will make 9 Pop-Tarts. Okay, so now we have our dough, and we're actually going to make a little egg wash, and this egg is going to help the 2 layers of dough stick to each other better so that you don't have all of your dough splitting apart and all of your filling oozing out while it is baking. Egg wash also makes the dough more brown and crispy. So we're just gonna egg wash. Oh, we made a mess. It's okay. Lots of egg everywhere. Okay, so to fill our Pop-Tarts, we have strawberry jam, and we also have some hazelnut spread. So the strawberry jam actually has a little bit of cornstarch in it that I added, cooked it, and then put it back in the jar. And that helps it be a little bit less runny. So we're just gonna put a little spoonful on each one. I always think that I need more, and then I have an oozing Pop-Tart, and I'm sad. And then, so we'll put the strawberry on half. This guy's really little. And then we also have hazelnut spread, like Nutella, but this is Turkish Nutella because why not? I just happen to have some. Hazelnut is not a flavor of Pop-Tart as far as I can tell, but that's okay. We're gonna go crazy because I just had some. So as I'm finishing our Pop-Tarts, I do think it's interesting that Roy Lichtenstein was so much focused on high art versus low art, right? Getting comic books, which were low art, and turning them into high art paintings in a museum. And Pop-Tart is also actually a kind of fun example of that same concept. If you remember the pop art ads, like the Crazy Good ads, Pop-Tart has very visual, highly memorable ads, and they actually are based off of the work of an animator named Don Hertzfeldt. whose work is really, really dark, really creepy. It's like if a Pop-Tart ad could give you nightmares. But what's interesting is Pop-Tart wanted his style, but he's so anti-advertising that he would have been like, no, I don't want to work for you. So they just copied his style. I always thought that Don Hertzfeldt made the Pop-Tart ads, but he didn't. So I think it's interesting, people copying each other, Roy Lichtenstein copying the pop artists, Pop-Tart copying Don Hertzfeldt. Everyone's copying each other. And the question is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. We're gonna find out. We're gonna roll out our second piece of dough and stick that on top. Be right back. We're going to slice down so we have 9 individual Pop-Tarts. And then using our fork, we're going to make sure to seal them as well as possible, because again, we don't want all of the jam and such spilling out. And then you also want to make sure to poke the tops a little bit so that the steam can get out. Just another way to keep everything contained. So poke them. And if you happen to remember which filling you put in which Pop-Tart, you could poke an N for Nutella and an S for strawberry. Or if you don't remember, it can just be a surprise. So, and if you have dough that's peeling up from your other dough, you can always get some water or some egg and kind of paste them together, and that will help them stay together. So after we have all of these sealed and poked, they will go into the oven at 350 for 30 minutes, and then we will have some nice flaky Pop-Tarts. Okay, so this is what our Pop-Tart looks like when it comes out of the oven. It's very much like a little pie. These ones actually had lemon filling in them that I made yesterday. And then I have 2 that I've already made a black outline on out of dark chocolate, the Ghirardelli stuff, which is pretty good. So when I look at Roy Lichtenstein's art, there's 3 things that stand out to me in all of the comic book art, as well as his later art that still included elements of the comic books. And those 3 things are really thick black lines, primary colors like red, yellow, and blue, and Ben-Day dots. And Ben-Day dots are dots in comic books that are used as a cheaper way to create different shades and different colors. So instead of printing the color purple, for example, they would print a bunch of red dots on top of a bunch of blue dots to create a cheap version of purple. So to create those 3 things, we have our chocolate icing to create the big, thick black lines. And then we're going to use white icing as well as yellow, and then red and blue sprinkles. And the sprinkles are going to be our little Ben-Day dots. So we're not creating a specific page out of a comic book or a specific piece of art. We're just creating colors and lines and shapes that remind us of Roy Lichtenstein's work from the 60s and on. So I'm going to start by just filling some white in. Okay, so we have 3 of our finished pop art Pop-Tarts. They are all slightly different, but the same primary color scheme with our Ben-Day dots. And I would just like to compare to a store-bought Pop-Tart, so you can kind of see the difference in the icing and also the thickness. And when I break this one apart, it's got some filling inside. When I break this one apart, it's much more, doesn't break as evenly. The filling is a different color. It's not as vibrantly red. And we will taste it. So yeah, the strawberry filling is very sweet, but the crust is just like the pie crust. It's very flaky, not dry and crumbly like the store-bought one, which is fine. Nothing wrong with a dry and crumbly crust. The sprinkles make me think of Halloween. They're very, very sweet, and they taste not like food. But overall, they're quite good. So here are Pop-Tarts for Roy Lichtenstein's birthday.